put yourself in those uncomfortable situations, because the more uncomfortable you are, the comfortable you get.
Hmm.
Because I was really an anxious person and didn't like to, I'm not saying meet new people, but it was hard for me to like go out and do these new things because I had so much anxiety,
Hmm.
and that would limit me to do a lot of things. I'd make excuses not to do it or why I shouldn't.
Welcome to the Neighborhood Money Podcast, a video podcast here to help you grow your knowledge around money, talk about entrepreneurship, and help you build a life you deserve. If you are new here in the neighborhood, my name is Cavan, and that guy across the screen from me is my co-host, Drew, and we are here each and every week to talk about money, to provide you interviews and stories about entrepreneurship. And this week, we are going to have another fantastic interview conversation with Andy Poster, who is a content creative and owner and runs A Poster's View, which is an online content creation. And Drew, it is fascinating the amount of stuff that his business offers, the amount of services that his business offers.
Yeah, when you're looking at his business, it's photography, it's videography, it's drone work, it's, all that stuff for weddings, for businesses. I mean, just about anything creative under the moon. I think it was a web design too.
Yeah, it was everything.
I mean, so if you need like a one-stop shop, that's pretty much where you can go. Plus a very, down-to-earth guy, as well as willing to go that little bit extra mile for his creative work and to make the client happy.
Yeah, his story is, a lot about hard work, vulnerability, and taking chances. So super excited that we had this conversation. We can share it with all of you. Also, in our podcast format, we will go through some key takeaways after the conversation. We'll dive into our weekly Money Minute, and then we'll talk about what's going on in the neighborhood here at Neighborhood Money to really wrap it up.
For a hint, it includes 5 letters.
I feel like that should be a pretty obvious hint.
And 6 tries, maybe?
All right, Drew, let's go check out what Andy has to say. Joining us in the neighborhood is Andy Poster, a freelance content creative and owner of A Poster's View. Andy pursues to take the ordinary to the extraordinary, whether it's photography, graphic design, web design, videography, or dronography. A Poster's View is really your one-stop shop for all of your content creation needs. Andy, super excited to have you join Drew and myself here in the neighborhood to talk all about your content business and all of the really cool stuff that you've got going on. But before we really dive into the conversation, how's it going?
I'm doing great, guys. Thanks for having me. I'm super excited to be here, and I'm excited to see what this is all about.
So you still in Royalton right now?
Correct. Yep. I moved back on our parents' family farm, which is right in Royalton, Minnesota. We got about 500 acres and a chicken barn. So between that and then the business, I try to like to do both of them, actually. Kind of like a nice breakup between the two.
Plus, with all that land, you can get some good pictures, I'm sure, too.
Oh, yeah.
Be a good
For
studio
sure.
to have people take wedding pictures or something at.
I know. We sold our cows about 6, 7 years ago, and I was thinking, a lot of people like those old barn venues.
Yeah.
I was telling my dad we should just redo that and have the weddings out here. We got the land and the area, so why not?
That's super awesome. Andy, I know I'm super excited to have you on because I am one of those wannabe photographers that kind of got into it for a little bit, but really didn't know how to move forward. So as I've looked at all of your work, I've been very impressed with everything that you've got going on. Actually, everyone that's listening to this podcast, I definitely highly recommend going checking out Andy's YouTube video because it's pretty sweet. All of the different, whether it's weddings or your vlogs or whatever it might be, it's really high quality content. So you're kind of the jack of all trades when it comes to content creation. Like I said, photography, graphic and web design, videography, dronography, the list kind of seems like it never ends, which is impressive. Tell us about how you got your start with photography or videography, and was there really one that came before the other?
So at college, I was doing graphic design, and then, I was thinking to myself after college, what am I going to do with that, I knew in my own head I didn't really want to work for a company doing...
Didn't really want to sit behind a cubicle
just
or anything
emails,
like that, yeah?
like doing emails, doing layouts like that, and editing other people's work.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I'm thinking, how can I incorporate another aspect? So I picked up photography my senior year of college to do like an internship. Also, it was a credit I needed to get, so it was kind of a win-win situation. And the guy that I was with was right locally in St. Joe, and he kind of was that action sports kind of photographer, graphic designer that kind of suited to what I like to do.
Mm-hmm.
So with that, we kind of got to shoot like the Red Bull Crashed Ice,
Cool.
BMX, like Elise Poe, she's a
Oh,
world
wow.
Olympic gold medalist, you know, so being around those type of atmospheres and people really got me excited about what I can do within that realm. So 2016 came around after I graduated and I started the own business. And, you know, I was doing a little bit of logos, little photos, you know, like senior portraits, few engagements, families, a few events. I ended up shooting for like the Minnesota Vikings actually for a season, doing their suite photography.
Cool. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So I'd go in like the suites where like the Vikings were on the field floor,
Yeah.
and just go around to each suite and saying, "Hey, want me to take your picture," kind of thing. But at that point, you know, it's just getting, how would I say, not enjoyable because it seemed more fake and staged to
Okay.
me. You know, like, hey, turn around from watching the game and come take your photo
Yeah.
taking. You know, and people are always like, "Why do I have to turn around to take a photo?"
Sure.
You know, it's getting them to like act like they're happy, but they're actually, you know, not enjoying it until they turn back around.
Sure.
At that point, I was just getting really sick of the photography, as it's hard to stage people when they're not into it as well.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I want them to be into it as much as I am, but when people are not, or not in photographic, it's really hard to get them to be engaged. So that's kind of when I picked up the video aspect and kind of taught myself through YouTube.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
So I picked up a drone and then just started watching YouTube videos, bought a new camera setup, you know, to change aspects, but also keep my photo one so I can do both.
Okay.
And then from there, I got offered to do some weddings, both photo and video, which started off to be at, you know, not a great price range, you know, because when you're starting out, you don't have any work to show. If you take on a wedding, it's a lot of plate on your hands, you know, if you mess up or
Right.
they don't like it,
Right.
and
Sure.
it's all on you. So with that being said, a little nervous going into it, especially when you don't know the people. You know, it's going into something where it's almost like you got to do an interview and, "Hey guys, how's it going? I'm Andy, the photographer, yada, yada, yada. I'll be your person
Yeah,
today."
definitely.
Yeah.
You know, the more you do, the easier it gets with that. And I kind of picked up more gigs, you know, word of mouth.
Okay.
One thing that was hard was the location I'm at aspect of what I'm doing for work. You know, it's like a lot of people don't want to pay the price for creative style work. They want your services, but then they see the price. They're like, "Oh,
Yeah.
you know, never mind," or "It's not in our budget." So that was really hard part to first start out, is get those clients. So a lot of it was actually doing it, you know, not for free, but little to nothing.
I'm glad you brought up the fact or the point around price, because I think that's like an overhanging thing when it comes to photography or videography, is people really want high quality stuff for their weddings, or, you know, maybe for a promo or whatever it might be. But then when they see that price ticket, it's kind of it's a shock that how could this type of work cost so much? And, you know, rightfully so, should cost that much, because it's very it takes a huge creative process and is very time consuming to have high quality work like that you put out. That's a huge challenge for a lot of people. But do you have any tips for our listeners when they are going through the process of trying to find the right photographer or videographer? Because, right, there's a ton out there, specifically if you're in a metro area. There's a lot of different opportunities or options for these types of services and a lot of different price ranges. Do you have any tips for our listeners on how they can choose the best photographer or videographer for their budget?
I would say just kind of stick in your style. I'm not trying to fall into, you know, you can easily fall into looking at other people's content and be like, "Oh, I want to do it that way." Or, you know, there's different presets for coloring. You know, sometimes you get to be unnatural. And for me, I was always just what I see is what I want to capture and make it, you know, just very detailed, not go away where there's oranges, blues that are like oversaturated. So I just stuck with what I thought what I would want, you know, and let that kind of fall into place, because I think once people start, like I said, seeing your work and getting it more out there, they kind of like, the more they see it, the more they will like it.
Gotcha.
Even though if you don't think that, because I know it's really hard to post something that you don't think's great. I mean, that's what I struggle with. So the more you post, I think the better, even if, you know, it's not great right away, but you see yourself grow and how people kind of come at you then at that point.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's really how people can learn or get to love your own product, is because you don't really do it for necessarily the money. You love the creative process of it. You love the passion of it. And then that comes out through all your pictures. But until you, like you said, have the library for it, people can't quite see your vision. Once they see it, they can see all that passion that's put into it and really want to, be a part of that.
Right. And kind of, like with photos, it's, you can create like a image and kind of create an emotion. But one thing I love about video is you kind of can tell a story and a whole emotion within it. It's not just a photo and, you can see they're happy. With a video, you can see them from being content to smiling to laughing to all that in between to, make it, like I said, cinematic and emotional to get those feels.
So would you say then for someone that's looking for your services of a photographer, videographer, is it really them trying to find what style they're looking for and then go from there? Is that kind of the way like a end consumer should actually go out and look for services?
I mean, yeah, there's that, as well as like, within a videographer or photographer, they can also shoot different types of ways. Like I don't just shoot one video the same or different ones in a certain sequence. I kind of have a certain style I use, but within there, I can kind of change each wedding as well. Not make them so the same as starting out with the couple, or just the details. I always try to switch it up to make it universal for everybody. If they want that type of video, I have it to show, rather than, well, you only have this type, that's the only ones I'll do, because then it kind of limits your possibilities.
If I could go back just a little, I know you touched on when you were starting out your videography with weddings and such, that you had to drop down your price to be able to get a couple of gigs and then slowly being able to build a catalog of your work. Do you think if you didn't initially drop down your price, you would have got jobs, or do you think that was that barrier to entry for you, is just saying I'm going to be low cost until I can really get a catalog, and then I can start charging more of a premium when they start seeing my style?
I guess that's a really good question. And the difference between like photography and video was, photography, you can kind of charge more at the time, or, at that time, a couple years ago, because it's needed, or that's the first thing that people get. Video is kind of at the last purchase, because it's just an extra option they can have. It's just how it is those days.
Depending
And
on
so that was the hard
budgets.
part. Yep. And how much their photographer was, if they do want a video. So it was, yeah, right away lowering it to get those jobs, especially for video,
Mm-hmm.
because they would say, oh, we don't need it. They would like to have it, but when they saw, the price, yeah, I would just be like, well, I can do it for this price, and try to make it work between them. That's what I was trying to do, just not to cut myself low budgeting, but also make it fair on both sides.
Yeah, because you're right. It does, like specifically weddings, it does add up pretty quickly from a photographer and a videographer. So it is interesting that you were able to drop your price to continue to get gigs, not just for yourself, but also to help out people that actually want this type of service and that want this high quality of work. So I know, Andy, you talked a little bit about starting your company, Upholsterer's View, and some of the challenges, or the challenge of being new to the stage and kind of really having to go through almost that rite of passage. What other challenges did you face as you started this company outside of just being brand new to the scene and not having that back catalog?
The challenges, I'd say, was like meeting these type of people and getting involved in like the community, because around this area there isn't much for those type of creators to connect. It's a lot of us in the cities, and I knew I could go there and get the work, but I knew I wanted to make it in my area, and that was the hard part, is how can I make it work, because I like working with these type of people that are also small town engaged into the product as well as what I may be creating for them, rather than say in the cities where they're just like, hey, do this for me.
Mm-hmm.
Send me when it's done. I don't care. Then I'll pay you. I like to build that relationship with them, kind of express what I'm doing, why I'm doing it. And yeah, kind of how I love to do it without just both being about the price.
Yeah, it's pretty fascinating. And you're totally right. When you get into bigger markets, the fact that it is really just like, I'm going to hire you, you're going to take my photos, and then you're going to give it to me at 2, 3, 4 weeks or whatever it might be. it's really
Yeah.
awesome that you take the time to not only get to know your clients, but also to, show them a little bit about your creative style and all of the work that you do to get that to that final product.
So as far as the clients being a little bit of a hurdle, was there much of a hurdle of actually taking your first steps to making this a business? Was there some big hesitation for you, or was it, I got a camera, I'm just going to start doing it?
Maybe just because like growing up on a farm and whatnot, I never liked working for anybody else.
Mm-hmm.
I always liked to be my own boss, and I think that kind of pushed me to is, how can I make this work for me as well as push myself? I had the camera, but you also got to put yourself out there to get those people besides just showing off what you have, because you're never going to meet the people or get those connections. So yeah, it was a big stepping stone of pushing myself past my kind of own comfortability.
Yep.
So I went to like these Rotary Act meetings, which is small businesses under 30 in St. Cloud.
Okay.
And my old internship boss would help me, like connect with other clients and people that he knew that would need my sort of work. Once the drone license kind of picked up and the drone work, that was a whole nother step, so,
Yep.
Kind of all just kind of starts coming together the more you keep pursuing, not giving up. Because there was times where, I didn't start my business and do that full time right away. Actually, I should go back and say I was doing concrete too,
Okay.
So that was my full time job for a couple of years until about 2018. And just to get that money base and feel kind of comfortable
Yep.
to then quit full time. So, it wasn't just, start up my business right away. It was the business on the side and building it in the background as I do the
Okay.
full time job until I kind of can turn those around.
What was that turning point for you of saying, all right, I'm pretty sure I can do this as a full-time gig. I'm going to quit my other job?
Well, it's pretty much working my ass off for really nothing besides money. Like concrete was 5 to 7 a.m. all the way till dark, never
Yep.
knowing my schedule.
Yeah, it's hard
Also
work.
hurting my body. And for what, just to get that small paycheck.
Yep.
And then you have the weekends to live. For me, I want to live and be happy, not just work. And then, that part on the side. So right then and there, I think was a big stepping stone of,
So was it like a
I
couple
want to be happy.
Was it a couple months of being unhappy, and then you're just saying, I don't know where it's going to go, I'm just jumping right into the deep end?
Well, it just kind of fell into like the routine of, after those couple of years working like that, you just have the same thing you do every week, work. I was so shot, you'd fall asleep, do it all over again. And there was no time for like, I felt like in my back of the mind, like I should be working on this for my business, how I can get that next step. But I was so exhausted and kind of drained,
Yep.
So what was that next step for you then? You're exhausted. You work in concrete. That's no joke of a field. Like you are using your full body and you're very tired at the end of the day. Like you said, you're probably falling asleep as soon as you get home and have some dinner. How did you get from that state to also building up your business on the side and then to the point where you can actually, call it quits and dive over to being a full-time photographer?
Well, it was mostly because honestly, like I was like mentally and physically shot. I think something just clicked in my head where like I've had like, so many knee surgeries and other type of injuries in my body that everything was shutting down. And I was just getting mad at every little thing, I couldn't, everything was just, nothing was going right at that point. So I just kind of not like blew up, but like something clicked in my head where I'm like, no, I'm gonna make this work. That photography, video stuff, and I wasn't gonna stop until I did, because I knew once I got there, I could fulfill that happiness and not prove other people wrong, but prove myself that I didn't need to do that other job, just to make that money.
It's pretty amazing the fact that you had that energy and then you had that drive because of your actual day job to get you to the point where you can actually quit your day job and do this full time. That's pretty fascinating, Andy. Talking a little bit more about A Poster's View, which is your content company, and you do offer that wide range of services. I actually wrote down just a few of the things because I knew I wouldn't remember them off the top of my head, but you do promos, weddings, grad pics, family photos, real estate. You do travel vlogging. You basically do anything and everything that someone might want. You know, you said you started small with photography. What made you want
Mhm.
to grow this business to basically be that one-stop shop?
Yeah, so when I said like when I started around that 2016, I, I knew I couldn't just do one aspect of that realm. I knew that in my own self that I like to do different types of projects and not be stuck with one thing because I knew I get sick of it and I get really antsy and I don't get worn out.
Mm-hmm.
So at that point, I'm like, well, I can do the photography, the logo design, the graphics. Now, how can I incorporate others? So I thought about the video because I figured at that point, I don't know, I had this realization that would be a new upcoming thing that would be big if I got onto it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I, taught myself through YouTube, and then I figured what else could I add, which would be web design. So then between that, you can do the logos for them as well as their content.
Mm.
So I knew I kind of wanted to always be a one-stop shop. It was just kind of how to get there and teaching myself because a lot of it was self-taught after college. I got the video or the photo and graphic design in college, but video, web design, that was all pretty much done by myself, which is my own kind of masters just through my like YouTube and whatnot. So
So with you doing a
yeah,
bunch of weddings and do some drone work for real estate, is there like any type of photography and videography and I guess slash drone niches that you really enjoy doing? Is it like, do you really enjoy, say you're out skiing or snowboarding and you can video that, or watching
yeah,
our buddy Brian do wheelies for a mile and a half and take pictures of that?
yeah.
Something.
I would say within that realm of like action sports, snowboarding, dirt biking, snowmobiling, and creating like a 1 to 2 minute promo highlight or clip,
Mm-hmm.
making it cinematic. It sucks you in. It's all about the beat of the music and
Yep.
I don't know, zooming out, sucking you back in. So my goal is just to keep you like the viewer attracted to the video the whole time rather than a 30 seconds of it, then I'm kind of burnt out
Hmm.
and I'm just on to the next thing. I want to keep you watching the whole time. So like I said, that probably the 1 to 2 minute promo videos, whether it's like I said, the action sports,
Mm-hmm.
the travel videos I like to do, within the drone, camera, GoPro, and then even like the 1 minute intro videos for like companies, that are fast shots, um, with the music kind of
Okay.
like that, I guess.
Have you still been doing like a lot of networking to get into those type of action sports as of late?
Not as much lately, just because I got to this point now where I am so much word of mouth,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just people contact me or they contact me off my website.
Okay.
So it's been pretty nice to, my weeks are never scheduled like in a nice timely manner. It's always really busy one week, or it's super slow. I'm editing.
Mm-hmm.
It's just kind of a roller coaster, but now it's kind of to that one where I can kind of schedule things in advance a little bit and time those out where it's never just nothing's happening.
So Andy, you've grown this business now to be basically all consuming of anything that people might want. But looking backwards to where when you started your journey, you started very small and you worked your way up. Like you said, you were self-taught for dronography or things like that. If you could look back and or go back and tell yourself just one piece of advice when you were starting your business, what would that piece of advice be?
Put yourself in those uncomfortable situations because the more uncomfortable you are, the comfortable you get.
Mm-hmm.
Because I was really an anxious person and didn't like to, I'm not saying meet new people, but it was hard for me to like go out and do these new things because I had so much anxiety,
Mm.
and that would limit me to do a lot of things. I'd make excuses not to do it or why I shouldn't. So I think if I could go back and tell myself it's fine, just you gotta breathe, relax, and it'll all work out in the end. Because yeah, because I was so hesitant right away of, oh, I'm gonna fail, it's not gonna work,
Mm-hmm.
and that kind of does drive a person down rather than you fail to learn, rather than in that aspect.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd say that's probably the biggest piece I would tell myself.
Was there a big support group that you had?
There really wasn't much at all because I had my friends that would support me, a little
Mm-hmm.
bit of my family, but it was all about like you got to make money to live
Mm-hmm.
or have a
Yep.
steady job. and no one was really bashing me or putting me down. It was just I was just doing my own thing, and I just wanted to prove that I can do it and make it work in this area.
Yep.
And I just kind of put my head down and kept pushing until I got to that point. So
That's pretty awesome. So this is kind of like random, but not. Since it's 2022 and everything's talking about blockchains and NFTs, are you looking at any of that crypto stuff for your photography? Like, are you planning on making NFTs or trying to sell them? Or
yeah, I was looking into it right before Christmas there. I was starting to like kind of draw some. I got like a little iPad that, you can sketch on and stuff because I always wanted to bring back my drawing and creative side because I
mm-hmm.
used to do that, in high school is like chalk drawing, painting, and how I could use that into doing, the NFTs and whatnot.
Yep.
It's just I'm already doing so much video and editing and stuff. I get so kind of burnt out of wanting to go sit down on another screen,
And do
and start
something different.
drawing. And yeah, but I know I want to because there's a good market for it.
Mm-hmm.
It's just what way do I go into it, Do I do series of artworks, or do I create logos of drones and kind of sell those? Because there's so many ways to go.
Yeah.
It's just finding your niche within there, and I'm still learning about it.
But but it has been on your radar.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, I've started a couple with they had the apes, apes going around.
Yep.
I thought about one with doing like some dogs, like how you see cartoon style with their hats on and smoking a cigar. Like doing series that are like kind of that cartoonish look. So I've had ideas, but they just never took place yet.
That sounds like it's going to be the future of a poster's view is going to be in the NFT space. So we'll see. That'd be pretty exciting.
A bunch of dogs smoking cigars.
Yeah.
Riding dirt bikes.
Right.
Well, even like some of like the drone logo I have, it has it like moving and lighting up, like motion style ones.
Yep.
So I was maybe thinking even doing something like that, but like I said, it's just up in the air right now, and
we'll see where it takes you.
It sounds like, looking back on your journey, it's really a story of working hard, putting your head down, making your passion become reality, and then truly just stepping out of your comfort zone, being vulnerable, which I think everyone in the content creation space needs to be, and just going for what you really, really want to go for, and making your dreams a reality. But kind of flipping the conversation here, so one thing we like to ask each one of our guests that joins the podcast is we like to ask them what their financial vice is, or what their financial guilty pleasure is. And that's really a way, hopefully, for people to get to know our guest, you in this instance, a little bit better. And it's really, the financial vice we see as a very important part of having a healthy personal finance. So whether that's actually like going out to eat and treating yourself once a month, or, for me personally, I like to play video games, and things like that, things that you buy that might make you feel guilty from time to time. So Andy, do you have a guilty vice, or do you have a financial vice? And if so, what is it?
Yeah. So for me, I'd say traveling is my kind of thing, because, it's an experience.
Yep.
I don't like to go out and do like bar events or spend money that way. To me, I'm like, how could I spend that extra $100 or on that weekend doing something that I might enjoy a little bit, but at the end, I'm like, well, I could be doing this or traveling to here and then capturing that moment and using that footage either for my memories or to sell. But I would say, yeah, traveling and doing unique experiences with others, as well as, maybe doing my solo trip. I like to do mountain biking, like things that are still active, and kind of that aspect, being in nature. I would say that's kind of my guilty pleasure is,
when you're in,
like I said, being in nature.
When you're in those nature settings, whether it's like snowboarding, biking, dirt biking, whatever, do you like to like go all in on the outfits and the top of the line stuff and stuff like that?
Yes and no. I like quality over quantity, obviously. Like, I'll spend the money on something great, even though I have like one of them, and then I'll wear whatever for clothes because that don't matter to me.
Yep.
I'd rather have the machine be the best part of it.
Nice.
Because I mean, that's going to get you to that point of having fun. So I'm going snowmobiling this next week out in Montana, and I'm just rent the best sled every year because I like power. I like the next, best thing where it's light, and just kind of letting this machine take control and you just kind of hang on and get that free mind of, I don't know, just being lost and in control at the same time.
Well, I'm actually on the same board of not caring what you wear because I could care less about the clothes I actually wear. And I'm totally on board with
Right?
quality over quantity, whether that's a sled or whatever it might be, whatever your interests are. But Andy, that kind of brings us to our last question, and that's so each and every week, Drew and I share what's going on in each of our neighborhood as a way for our listeners to get to know us a little bit better. I know you kind of hinted a little bit that you're going on a snowmobiling trip here in the next week or so, but what's going on over in Andy Poster's neighborhood? Where can people find out more about you and all the stuff that you've got going on with A Poster's View?
Yeah, so you can find me on either Instagram at Andy Poster. Website is at apostersview.smugmug.com, and that kind of shows all my content and work and whatnot. Otherwise, Facebook, you can meet me there. And yeah.
So where are you going to be out snowmobiling?
West Yellowstone, Montana,
Just
for 5 days actually. It's I usually try to find people that are kind of reckless as I am because I went with people that are not like that, and it really can make the trip not as fun because they're either getting stuck the whole time or not going to places you want to go. So, because I like to, hit cliff or jumps off cliffs, ride between trees, kind of that extreme aspect. So, going out with the new group this year to see how that goes.
How many people?
About 5 of us, I think.
5? You guys just like road tripping out there then, all in the same vehicle? And
yeah, I'm going with my cousin's brother, and they've been going like the last 13 years. So they think 2 of them rent sleds and then the other ones have them. So we'll just drive the truck and trailer out there and go from there. So I'm looking forward to it. So
are you going to film it all?
Oh yeah, I got this new 360 GoPro.
Nice.
So, like you can grab the camera and look at you, look up, and kind of look all around, and it's pretty kind of badass. So between that, the drone, and the other GoPros, pretty excited to put a little video together.
Well, I'm pretty excited to see how that comes out because, like I said, I really like all of your work that you got out on your YouTube, specifically your travel vlogs. They're pretty awesome. So if you guys get the chance, go to YouTube and check out Andy Poster. We'll actually put it all out on our accounts when we release this episode. But Andy, super happy to have you join us here on the podcast today. This was a whole lot of fun to hear all about all the stuff that you've got going on, and I wish you the absolute most fun out on your snowmobile trip, and I can't wait to see what your video footage is like when you get back.
Awesome. Thanks again, guys. Appreciate you having me.
Drew, what a pretty incredible journey Andy has had thus far, starting in the concrete pouring business, working his tail off on the nights and weekends to build this content creation business, A Poster's View, to get to a point now where that is his full-time job and he gets to spend his time outside of working, traveling, and really truly living the life that he really wants to. But what would you say coming out of that conversation is your main takeaway?
One of the coolest parts of that interview for me is Andy wanted to start this business his own way. He's talking, there's so many different filters that people use that are very common. So there's so many creatives that can tend to look alike. And you tend to have to be in a more population dense city to be able to network and charge more. And I think it's so cool that Andy wanted to be in his own location, a little bit smaller town. Like you said, he's living on a farm, and he was able to get the pictures and the environments that he wants, kind of going out and networking himself and just being word of mouth and being able to, really take a price or a cut in price early on so that he can get that word of mouth out and people can actually see his creative style. And, as this catalog continues to grow for him of art, people are going to say, hey, that's Andy's style. I love Andy's style. It's not just another run of the mill type of creative. And I think that's really awesome that he stuck to his guns and wants it to do it his way because he is a creative. So why would you ever want to dull that by being a copycat?
I think the theme can kind of be put across a variety of areas of life, specifically even personal finance. Andy built his own plan for his business. He didn't go down just a traditional route of photography
Mm-hmm.
or just videography. He kind of is doing everything, but in his own way. And it's very similar for personal finance when you're trying to figure out what your financial plan is, or really just any area of life. There's going to be things out there, or there's going to be people and mentors out there that are going to tell you one way to do something, but you really have to find
Mm-hmm.
out what is the best way for you to go forward with whatever journey, whether it's entrepreneurship, personal finance, or something else. You really have
Yep.
to figure out what's best for you and what's most appropriate to get you to meet your goals down the line. Drew, I think my big takeaway, and I really thank Andy for hopping on the podcast and telling us his story, is the fact that he was pretty evident that he was vulnerable through those early stages of building his business. Like, he said that he had a lot of anxiety. He wasn't quite sure in himself of creating this business and getting it going and really taking that leap of faith, that chance to build something for himself. But he did, and he was vulnerable, and he understood those feelings. But he, with hard work and the ability to sacrifice, he was able to take his business from just a side hustle, side hobby, to a full-time and thriving business.
Yeah, when it's, talking about a little bit of that anxious side of it, there's so many times where in personal finance that, money, like we had with the Kriegers on, they said money shouldn't be weird,
Yeah.
but for some reason it is. And when people look at, either starting a budget or trying to pay off debt or keeping up with the Joneses, there's always kind of that anxiousness about money. And I think it's so cool to see that in an entrepreneur that there's still that anxiousness. You don't really know where the future is going to lead, but Andy was able to take that leap forward. He knew in his head that he wanted to travel more. He wanted to have a life that wasn't just work, eat, sleep, or sleep, eat, work, repeat.
Right.
And even though he wasn't sure where this was going to take him, it's something he wanted to do and really took that leap of faith, which is pretty awesome.
Yeah, it's pretty fascinating, Drew. The fact that we can pull these themes from these different conversations with entrepreneurs, even when we're not talking about money per se, but a lot of the lessons that entrepreneurs go through, or lessons that people go through in general, it can so directly be applied to your money and to your relationship with it and your money management skills. So happy that Andy could hop on to the podcast and tell us his story, because it was pretty amazing.
It was great seeing and chatting with him again. And, as this podcast grows, I would like to, catch up with him in the future. And maybe there's a possibility of us needing some type of stock photos or some videography or drone work, or whatever it might be. So it's always nice to have the, network of people as well.
Yeah, I think a new intro to the podcast might be in order. We'll see what's going to play in our future.
We'll see. You never know.
One of the most powerful tools to save and invest in retirement is a Roth IRA. Why? Well, a Roth IRA allows you to make after-tax contributions, which allows this money in the account to grow tax-free as long as you follow a couple of rules. 1, withdrawals are taken at 59 and a half years of age or older. And 2, you have this account open for 5 or more years. If you end up breaking one of these rules, you have to pay income tax on any earnings you have, plus a 10% penalty, which can really add up. Now, in 2022, you are allowed to invest up to $6,000 if you're under 50, and up to $7,000 if you're 50 years of age or older. As long as you make $129,000 as a single tax filer or $204,000 as a married filing jointly tax filer, you should be good to go. Most Roth IRAs allow you access to a variety of investments like index funds, individual stocks, bonds, and more, and is a great and powerful tool to save and invest for retirement.
So this week in What's Going On in the Neighborhood, Drew and I really wanted to talk about a worldwide phenomenon, to say the least, and some of the implications of this phenomenon getting bought out by the New York Times. And so I suppose, without further ado, and trying not to continue to delay the actual thing we want to talk about here and What's Going On in the Neighborhood, is Wordle, the worldwide phenomenon. Drew, have you played this at all?
I have not played it, but
oh man, you are missing out.
My wife, for like the last week, has been, oh, I got Wordle in 4 tries. Oh,
Yeah.
I got it in 3 tries. Oh,
Yeah.
my sister got it in 2. What the heck?
Yeah.
I haven't actually done it, but I tend to be slow movers on that. Like it took me forever to get TikTok on my phone.
Yeah.
But this Wordle, it just is pretty crazy. I didn't hear about it at all. And then Jordan started talking about it, and it's all over Twitter, all
Yeah.
over Facebook.
Uh-huh.
Everybody I talk to is playing this Wordle, and it's quite the phenomenon for how fast it grew and is now just common knowledge almost.
So for you, those of you that haven't heard about it or haven't actually played it, the essence of the game is you get 6 tries to guess a 5-letter word, and in each guess, when you guess a word, the letters will change a certain color. Gray meaning that that letter is not in the word, yellow meaning that letter is in the word but in a different location, and then green meaning that that letter is in the word and in the correct location. So you get 6 different tries, and each try you hopefully find out more and more letters to be in the word. And the goal, as simple as it might sound, is just to guess the word in 6 or less tries. But Drew, it's been
Yeah.
a phenomenon. And like for me, I know I have a group chat where each day there's probably about 6 or 8 of us that send in our Wordle score, if that's
So
even what you call it. Yeah, so it's either text messages, you can do it in, shoot, you could email. I'm pretty sure you can do it over like Facebook Messenger or all those different types of chatting apps. But
mhm.
it seems like, and from people that I've talked to that have multiple conversation streams with Wordle, it sounds like this is a really big way for people to stay connected because it is a very simple and easy way to play a game, but also to stay connected. But Drew, that's not really the story here, right?
No, for how fast it grew, it caught the eye of the New York Times, and just on uh, last Monday, so for that, it would have been the 31st of January.
Yep.
I think they came out and saying that New York Times bought Wordle for a 7-figure dollar amount.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm guessing it's probably just a little over $1 million, probably.
Right.
It's probably not on the middle to high end, I would guess.
Right.
And it's interesting that New York Times would want to buy that, but I was reading a little bit of an article and they want to grow to a certain number of subscribers by 2025. And they feel like these user interactive sharing games are part of their strategy. And it is pretty interesting that they're willing to, they also have crosswords, I think what called spelling bee, but then get this word also. Is it going to be free for people now? Or are you going to have to pay for it? It's gonna be interesting to see where that goes.
Yeah, I think I'm not like a diehard Wordle person. If it goes away tomorrow, it's whatever. But I think the
Mm-hmm.
essence of Wordle and almost like the cult following of Wordle is the fact that it is a browser-based game that doesn't need any information besides like your IP address or whatever it might be. And you can just jump in, play, and get out. Where now when you talk about like the New York Times coming in and buying it, there's a really good chance that in order to play the game now, you're going to have to give up some personal information, email, name, whatever it might be, or you'll have to buy a subscription to get access. And so it's a really interesting play by the New York Times just because of the essence of the game in and of itself is so easy just to jump in and not give up information, where now the New York Times is obviously making this play for a reason, right? They want to bring in subscribers, like you said. So it's a really interesting play. I'm really interested to see how this actually works out for them. And, you do see the cult following of Wordle players, like the really people that are passionate about it, absolutely
Mm-hmm.
not liking this approach from the New York Times, and rightfully so. So it's going to be really interesting to see how this goes here in the next couple of months.
Yeah, it seems like anytime something new and creative comes out, it just gets bought out by somebody big, and then they tend to ruin the actual spark of it. And I don't know if this thing has any patents or any intellectual property attached to it, and if not, how many copycats are going? Like, if New York Times is going to start asking for a subscription, you're paying for it. Is like Facebook just going to have it daily for free with like your user network? Because like that can't be a hard game to put together as a developer. I
Yeah, I
wouldn't
mean, there's
think.
already been copycats that have profited off of this, right? I think on the App Store, Apple App Store alone, there was like 2 or 3 that got removed because of And I don't think there's a patent out there, but just the fact that they were trying to act as Wordle and then having people pay them through their app caused a huge problem.
And maybe that's why it was only, they say 7 figures. So I'm guessing low 7 figures. And maybe it's because it didn't have any IP, but it already had the user base and the name. And so that could be a big part of it. It's kind of interesting too. I didn't, until I read that article, that Wordle was actually a play off of words of the creator's last name, which is Wardle. So instead of an O, it's an A. So I think that's pretty interesting. But the guy was saying, the creator, is him and his buddies were, during lockdowns or when they're just sitting at home or working remotely, him and his buddies would always play crossword puzzles, and they'd play that spelling bee game, and they just loved doing that. And then they just developed their own game because of that, which is pretty cool. So he said he loved playing that stuff on the New York Times. He said it was an easy fit for them to buy it out.
Really fun game, Drew. You got to check it out at least one time before the New York Times puts their New York Times-ish stuff on top of it.
You know what? Something I do want to mention with this is kind of funny is, was it yesterday, I want to say, when my wife's sister texted my wife and saying, hey, Wordle got bought out by the New York Times. So then I, like, being a smart was like, tell her, oh, does she have any more breaking news from last week? And then she had a really good response of saying, well, you know, the neighborhood money doesn't report on it, so I had to hear from my other podcasts that are more under breaking news. So, like, gotta be a little bit great response. So I almost had to at least bring it up during this episode.
Shot to the heart. It looks like we've got to start putting out some more frequent episodes to get on top of the breaking news, Drew.
I think so. What a great episode with Andy. At the end of his interview, you're able to find out where you can find him, see some of his work if you're looking for that type of industry. But seriously, check out his YouTube page. His videography is awesome, and he especially likes all that extreme type of, you know, sports and stuff, but that's really entertaining to watch, and I think you should definitely check it out. But I hope you guys enjoyed this podcast, this episode, as much as we did. If there's any other type of entrepreneurs that you guys would like for us to have on, just let us know. Send us a DM, put it in the comments. If there's anything else you'd like to hear from these episodes, please let us know. With all that said, if you listened this far, we appreciate it, and we will see you guys next week in the neighborhood.